it's my story, and I'll tell it how I want to. Here it is, my story, and I've really debated about this. I've thought about it for a long time, and I've self-sabotaged myself for a long time with trying to get this story out. And now I feel this sense of urgency on my heart, as if it's now or never kind of thing. I'm either going to get it out or I'm not. And I've thought long and hard about how I want to do this story and in what ways do I want to do this story. And I've thought, honestly, I want to start from the beginning. I want to start from the beginning because I started from the beginning. So shouldn't I start from the beginning? I think I should start from the beginning. But I don't know, because I'm like, oh, are you just wanting to start from the beginning so you look sweet and innocent once you get to the bad parts? No, I really want to be honest. I want to be honest. I do. I really want to be honest with this. And I'm hoping that honestly, I just hope that my story helps someone. I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm not looking for, anything like that. I want to get my story out for my healing purposes, and I hope that it helps someone. If it doesn't, oh well, I need to get my story out for my healing purposes. So that's what this is mostly about. And so, yeah, I'm going to tell my story my way, and my way is starting from the beginning, and that's okay. I think that that's fine. And so I'm not trying to get your sympathy. I'm not trying to get your understandings. Yeah, there were bad guys at the beginning here, but honestly, I'm so grateful for everything that I've gone through, even my bad moments, which is going to be the hardest. And that's why I self-sabotage myself. I don't think that I want to get into my teen years and my adult years. I think that I want to avoid it. But no, I want to face this head on. I really do. And so let us begin. Oh, my story. So, my story, it starts as, honestly, I don't know where my story starts. I think that it has no ending and it has no beginning, but there was a beginning. And the beginning of this story started when I was just a spirit. And my mother was only 17 years old. She was living with her sister who had a boyfriend, and I think they ended up getting married, her big sister. And she met my dad. And I think that my spirit kind of orchestrated their meeting, because there is no way, if you meet my mom, she's hippie, and if you meet my dad, he's hillbilly. There's no way that they would have ever gotten together, I don't think. There was no way they were going to last. But they came together. It all started when my mother was living with her sister in the town that my dad grew up in. And my dad was on a back road like he always is. My dad's a people person, and he's always on the back roads. And my mom's sister, my aunt, and her boyfriend at the time saw my dad, and they went and asked him if he had any way for them to get some marijuana. And he did. And so he did. And he brought it to them, and they invited him over to come smoke. And there he met my mom. And my mom says that whenever she saw him, she was like, oh my gosh. She heard him first and was like, who is this hickey? Whatever. And she opened the doors and saw the most gorgeous man in overalls. I don't get it. I think that I was kind of there saying, you like him, don't you? Trying to orchestrate the whole thing. I don't know. But I kind of do feel like I was. I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, they hook up. But my dad also just got over a long-term relationship where he was in love with this girl, and his mother was in love with this girl. And he had just gotten my big sister's mother pregnant, and he was trying to get away from her. And so he decided to take off to Oklahoma. And when he takes off to Oklahoma, my mother follows him. and they become big time drug dealers in Oklahoma. And they were making a lot of money selling drugs, doing drugs. They did acid, shrooms, all kinds of stuff. And they got pregnant with me. Yeah, I came on board. I entered my mother's womb and I began to knit together my body, this body that I'm living in today, in my mother's womb. I entered the body within 3 weeks and began to feel pain. I began to feel my mother's emotions. I began to feel what it felt like to feel again and be outside of the spirit and in a body. And it wasn't comfortable. But my mother decides, even though they're making plenty of money dealing drugs, that she wants a rope and a stake from the grocery store, and she steals these things and gets caught. So she's in jail, and her dad comes down from Arkansas to Oklahoma to get her, and she, tells him, I'm not want to go with you, I'm pregnant with his baby, da-da-da-da-da. So her dad goes to my dad and gives him an offer that he can't refuse. He offers him a dairy farm and in exchange, marry my daughter and take care of your child. My dad couldn't refuse that, and so he decides to marry my mother, and they get a dairy farm. And, well, it didn't last. It wasn't meant to last. My mother didn't like it there. She didn't want to be under her dad's dairy farm, and she was always running off. She cheated on my dad. She broke my dad's heart. And she claims that he cheated on her too, but I don't know. It's just not in his, it is in his character, but it's not. I don't know. Maybe he did. She claims that he cheated on her with the little girls. I don't know about that. But I do know that she did cheat on him, and there were conflicts, and it just wasn't working out. And little me at 3 months old, my parents get divorced. And my mom is with another guy almost immediately and planning on moving to Texas with me, which throws my grandma into a fit, which makes me want to go. Rewind. All right. So, whenever I was born on December 26th, the day after Christmas. My mother says that the Christmas feast is what put her into labor. The Christmas meal that night, and she was in labor all night long and all the next day until the afternoon whenever I finally arrived. My grandmother was so happy. In her mind, it was her first grandchild. She already had one. My dad had gotten my big sister's mother pregnant a year before me, but I was the first one in wedlock. Is that what it would be? Out of wedlock? We don't do that in our culture no more. But I was the first one born to her oldest son that was married now. And so she was at the hospital, and they say that the Arkansas River froze up on the day that I was born. Yeah. And, one of the worst ice storms in Arkansas history happened on the day that I was born while my mother was in labor with me. And my grandmother was so excited that I was born. She was so happy. They say that whenever they said, it's official, she's a girl, she's here, that my grandmother ran up and down the halls in such a heart of love and happiness, saying, it's a girl, it's a girl. And she's loved me with her whole heart, her whole life. And I'm so grateful for my grandmother. I know that she's not the best lady in the world, but I am so grateful for her and her love. She's loved me since day one, and I'm so grateful for that. But my mother wanted to move to Texas, and my grandmother was not having it. My dad and my mom made a deal. She said, you can keep the house and the land, the whole dairy farm and all that, but Actually, I think at this time they were already kicked out of the dairy farm. They ended up in a different house and land because my mom just rebelled against her dad hardcore for good reasons. But we're not going to get into that. That's not my story. So my mom told my dad that he could keep the house and the land that they had, but she wanted me. And so my dad's like, deal. Little did she know, my grandmother was not going to stand for that. My grandmother didn't care if my dad decided to trade me for a house. My grandmother was like, oh no, that baby girl, you can't take her. She threw a fit because my mama was moving to Texas. She was like, no way. No, it can't happen. And so my grandmother took my mom to custody court, and my mom lost custody. And this hurt my mom bad. But I didn't realize. I didn't know. Another thing that happened, and I don't know how or what time exactly, but in my infancy, I had to have been older than 3 months old. But maybe I was only 3 months old. My mom had put me in a walker. She said that I wasn't even walking in the walker yet, but I did. And she put me in a walker and left the room to go do some stuff in the kitchen. And I walked, and there was like a little 2-step thing. And I walked, and I fell, and it like hit me, and it broke my collarbone. And my collarbone is still broke to this day and out of sorts. Because whenever you're a baby and you break a bone, there's really nothing they can do about it. They're just like, yeah, she broke her collarbone, but it's going to have to heal. And it's just going to have to heal differently. And so there was that. And I do want to mention that because that was probably one of my very first traumas, along with my mom, my being taken back and forth from my grandma to my mom. My earliest memory, I didn't know who my mom and dad was. I remember figuring it out, being like, oh, this is who my mom is, and this is who my dad is. I was very, very confused. I mean, yeah, I didn't really know what a mom or a dad was, but I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. I was very, very confused. My grandmother got custody of me by the time I was 6 months old, and my mom was devastated. She did go off to Texas, and I don't know. I feel like I have this memory of getting in an airplane and riding with my mom. I don't know. It's really weird feeling. It's like I'm in a car seat. I'm just like this little baby, and we're on this airplane. I don't even know that it's an airplane, but now that I know what airplanes look like, I'm like, yeah, that was an airplane. So I don't know. That's really crazy. And my grandmother had custody of me, and I do remember a time of being like in what is my uncle's bedroom in a crib, and I remember crying because something was on my neck. I remember my neck, it just hurt all the time, and I felt, especially as a child, I just felt like I was always being choked. I never could wear a necklace. I never, for the longest, every time you put a necklace, I'm like, oh, get it off. I would wear it for a couple hours and then have to take it off because I always felt like being choked. And I remember in my grandma's house, in my uncle's bedroom, because my dad's brother, his little brother, is only 10 years older than me. And so he was only 10. And I remember just crying and being upset, and him looking over the crib and just pulling down. And it felt so comforting to have it pulled down. And I remember thinking, how did you know? How did you know that I was crying because I was being choked? So I don't know. I find that very, very interesting. So yeah, that's my infancy years, and that's the beginning. That's how I began. There you go. There's my first year of life, and lots of traumas already. So we're off to a good start, don't you think? So, yeah.